Hello YouTubers, in anticipation for The Defenders arriving on Netflix, I decided to revisit some older films, more particularly 2003's Daredevil. In this movie review segment, I'm going to be going over the theatrical edition from 2003. Yeah, Daredevil was the fourth entry in the Marvel universe, not Marvel Studios that we have now, and not counting Captain America or the Dolph Lundgren Punisher, no, the fourth Marvel movie. After Blade, X-Men, Spider-Man, and then it's Daredevil. So yeah, this was originally going to be rated R, and it was trimmed down to PG-13 with some extra reshoots. And yeah, it just feels like that. It feels like a PG-13 movie in an R-rated atmosphere. I remember when this movie came out, I was so pumped to see it. I was just barely getting into Marvel Comics. Big fan of X-Men, Spider-Man, Blade, and I saw the trailer to this. Plus, it came out a day before my birthday. It came out on Valentine's Day on February 14th, 2003. My birthday is February 15th. I went to go see it. Big fan of Daredevil. Got me into Daredevil. I even have my t-shirt. I got a comic book adaptation of Daredevil. And I remember Daredevil in the Spider-Man cartoons and video games, so I was really anxious to see how this film would turn out. It was met with the audience and the critics with a negative reaction, but it did get number one in the box office when it came out, and at the time in 2003, it was actually the lowest budget movie to gross over $40 million in its opening weekend, which is not bad. It was actually a very popular movie at the time, despite people's opinions of it now, or even back then, people who read a lot of comics. As a movie, it was pretty solid. It's enjoyable for what it is. Is it the best ever? No. Is it as great as a Netflix show now? No. But it's a solid movie in its own right, and it's better than other superhero films. At least it was taken seriously enough where it wasn't all the way cheesy, and plus it has some very good performances. So what is the cast and crew, and what is it about? Well, Daredevil, of course, stars Ben Affleck as Matt Murdock Daredevil, Jennifer Garner as Elektra Natchios, Michael Clarke Duncan as the Kingpin, Colin Farrell as Bullseye, with Jon Favreau as Foggy Nelson. Yeah, Iron Man Jon Favreau, guy on PCU. But yeah, I was a huge fan of Daredevil. Again, the comics, merchandise, the soundtrack is amazing. I'll get to that later. But that's the cast and crew, and it's directed by Mark Steven Johnson. He actually did Ghost Rider and the Elektra movie. That might explain a lot about this film, but I highly recommend checking out this film and the director's cut of Daredevil. It's very well done. And yeah, he also had a hand in writing Grumpy Old Men. That I cannot believe. I was like, wow, that material was done very well compared to some of the superhero films. It just amazes me. Anyway, Daredevil pretty much takes place in Hell's Kitchen of New York City. He's Daredevil, he's a vigilante, and he's also blind. He got into an accident when he was a young child where radioactive material went into his eyeballs and basically made him blind. But in addition, he ends up getting the ability to have higher senses, so he can hear things, and it's almost like a sonar vision, like a bat almost. Daredevil is pretty much like the Batman of the Marvel Universe, and that's how he gets his ability. That's how he's able to see, how he's able to fight crime, besides having other training. But during the day, he's a lawyer named Matt Murdock, and pretty much he solves cases both as Daredevil and Matt Murdock. And that's where the story starts in the theatrical version. And he ends up going after this guy who gets off named Quesada, and that's where he starts off with. And all these men are related to the Kingpin, somebody named Wilson Fisk, played by Michael Clarke Duncan. He's untouchable. They know who the Kingpin is. They know who's getting these criminals off, who those criminals are working for in this crime syndicate in Hell's Kitchen, but they can't bring him down. And that's pretty much Daredevil's whole mission of the movie, is to bring this man down. Through the process of the film, again, like I mentioned, we get to see how he ended up having an accident, how he got blind. His father used to be a boxer and was killed by the mob for not taking a hit. So he lost his father at a very early age. And we get to see his backstory and how he grew up. Also, he works with Foggy Nelson, played by Jon Favreau. He's a great friend of his, and while they were out after a case one time, he meets Elektra Natchios. She's the daughter of a very wealthy man. She does a fantastic job in this. There is an odd schoolyard fight scene, but hey, it's the early 2000s, and it kind of works for the time period it's in. It's really silly now, but just go with it. Afterwards, everything ties to the Kingpin. The Kingpin has Elektra's father murdered when he brings this assassin named Bullseye, played by Colin Farrell, into the fold. And this is the first movie where Colin Farrell actually used his natural Irish accent. And it's weird because Colin Farrell and Ben Affleck were supposed to be the other roles. Ben Affleck was in the running for Bullseye and Colin Farrell in the running for Daredevil, and they eventually swapped roles, which it works for this film. Colin Farrell is just an evil bastard in this. I like what they did with Bullseye. They went away from the cheap kind of latex suit and gave him like a skin tattoo of a bullseye. He's very menacing. It has a very unique look to it. Plus, the Kingpin is an African American, but you know what? Look beyond that. Michael Clarke Duncan does such a great job. He is the Kingpin. Now, the writing doesn't really get to show the calculative side of the Kingpin like the TV series on Netflix does, but for the material given, Michael Clarke Duncan embodies it. He even gained 40 pounds to get into this role. That's dedication, and Ben Affleck is also very dedicated in the role of Matt Murdock. To make a long story short, Elektra's father gets murdered, and Daredevil is blamed. She's on a vendetta against Daredevil, not knowing it's Matt Murdock, who she's now kind of having a relationship with. So it all culminates to a battle between Elektra, Bullseye, and Daredevil. She finds out the truth. Bullseye kills her in a very brutal way. This film borrows a lot from Frank Miller's story. They even have Heather, one of his girlfriends, split up from him and break up the relationship at the beginning of the film in a voicemail. And it really borrows a lot from the comics, even some of Kevin Smith's works, who he has a cameo in. Overall, there's a lot of interesting characters here, and it all culminates to the showdown with the Kingpin. You find out that the Kingpin, before he became the Kingpin, he was just a muscle man, had his father killed. He was the one that killed Matt Murdock's father, so it becomes personal now. Elektra's gone, and he has to go after his father's killer, and it all comes to a climatic showdown between Daredevil and the Kingpin. Now, in the theatrical version, the fight is very short. It's really, really short. I mean, you're expecting a big fight, and it's just over in 2 seconds. Not much done. But there is a cool battle. And my only con with the film, really, besides the story and some of the cheesiness and the acting, my only real con that actually bothers me is the fact that the Kingpin gets caught. Because in the comics, he always gets away. He never gets caught. And in this, he did. Now, there is a comic book storyline around this time where the Kingpin was finally captured. And I guess I'm okay with that, but as a first incarnation of the Kingpin in motion picture, I didn't want him to be caught. I wanted to be more faithful to the comics. He always gets away. The Kingpin, Wilson Fisk, always gets away. That's why he's the Kingpin. And that bothered me because they made him more of just like a hoodlum instead of this like calculative, maniacal type of individual he's basically the puppet master of Hell's Kitchen. And yeah, that's pretty much Daredevil. It's a heroic day, and he saves the day. It's a basic plot, really. It's basically an origin story with a bit of a love story and a revenge film put in one. And it's okay for what it is. Is it as iconic and well done as X-Men and Spider-Man? No. And Fox actually increased the budget after the success of Spider-Man. And it got a lot of things right, but it also got a lot of things wrong. And some of that, too, is because they edited it down to PG-13. This is when Avi Arad still was a producer before they had Marvel Studios, so there's a lot of decisions being made in the production about what would be more of a marketable film instead of making something that would be true to the character. And you could tell the director had a problem with that, so if you haven't seen the director's cut, I highly recommend it. Most of you out there probably know what this movie's about. I know I went through that plot summary very quickly, but if not, go watch it. The soundtrack, though, holy shit, I love the soundtrack. I have the soundtrack, and oh my god, Won't Back Down by Feel, Bring Me to Life by Evanescence, that was a song of 2003, seriously. Hoobastank, For You by The Calling, Bleed For Me by Saliva, Hang On by Seether, Learn the Hard Way by Nickelback, Man Without Fear by Rob Zombie, Right Now by Nappy Roots, Freaking Evening Rain by Moby, Until You're a Reform, Chevelle, you have, Palo Alto, Fade Out, Fade In, Caught in the Rain by Revis, Boy Set Fire with High Wire Escape Artists. You also have My Immortal by Evanescence, Sad Exchange by Finger 11, Simple Lies by Endo. The soundtrack is better than the film. Again, a testament to like mediocre films or bad films have an amazing soundtrack, and that soundtrack rocks. It's one of my favorite soundtracks. I can listen from beginning to end. And the music adds a lot to the atmosphere. And you also have Graham Revell do the score. It's very iconic, very heroic, where it's like dun 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 dun. That and the cinematography feels very much like a comic book. I really like everything about this movie. Is it the best superhero film? No, but we've had far worse in the past, and I feel like this gets kind of a bad rap, both the theatrical and the director's cut. So for the theatrical version of Daredevil, before I go into more stuff, I give it a 3 out of 5. It's not the worst superhero film, but it's a solid film. Not the best Daredevil interpretation we could have had, adaptation we could have had, but it's a solid film in its own right. Plus, Ben Affleck and Jennifer Garner met during this movie, so yeah. The acting, somewhat kind of rocky, somewhat wood, and somewhat cringeworthy, but I think Ben Affleck has a lot of dedication. He actually read all the Daredevil comics before taking the role of Matt Murdock. I like the humor between him and Jon Favreau. I like the chemistry between him and Jennifer Garner. The late, great Michael Clarke Duncan just has a very good role as Kingpin. You don't even think about his race in this. He's the Kingpin. He's Wilson Fisk. And he does a very underrated and amazing job. I just wish he was given more material because you could tell everybody in this film and just involved had a lot of great care about the character of Daredevil and that whole lore. Colin Farrell's evil as Bullseye. It's among one of his best roles, and you just hate him. You just want Daredevil to kick his ass. I love some of the fight scenes, but some of the CGI has aged really badly, like the kind of Blade 2 CGI where it looked somewhat real at the time, but over the years it's just aged incredibly bad. And then the soundtrack would turn some people off, but I personally like the soundtrack. And I like the way it's shot and everything, the church scene, how the narrative flows with the flashbacks and how everything starts with him almost dying and him reliving his life up to that point. That's very well done. And the only thing I don't like is how quick the Kingpin gets defeated in that ending. That really turns it down for me, because otherwise the first half and a little bit of the second is really, really, really good. I just wish they had more of like the little guy struggling. It's too blockbuster, it's too Hollywood for me in some way, but the director's cut rectifies that. So yeah, a 3 out of 5. Some kids out there watching, it may not be the best movie, but for me at 2003, it was a popular movie. Despite people's opinions, what they want to admit, this was a very popular movie at the time. I was a big fan of it, and again, yeah, I have the comics, the shirt, the soundtrack. Yeah, every time I hear Bring Me to Life by Evanescence, I think of this. Anyway, that is my review of Daredevil in anticipation for The Defenders. I give it a 3 out of 5, and if you somehow haven't seen this film, why did you watch this review? Second of all, go check out the theatrical cut, and better yet, check out the director's cut. I'm going to be reviewing it shortly, so be on the lookout for my director's cut review. Anyway, if you've seen the movie, let me know your thoughts on it. Did you like it? Did you think it was a steaming pile of junk? What did you think of the film? And also let me know some of your favorite moments, some of your favorite songs off the soundtrack. Anyway, if you like this video, click the like or dislike if you don't like it. And then comment and subscribe for more videos. Hey, I'm not the bad guy, kid. I'm not the bad guy. I'm just a really bad actor. No, I'm kidding.